It's the boys from Minnesota back at it again. Hot takes from Nels, Tyler, Josh, and Ben. From the first batter up to the safe clinch you pitch. Get up out your seats, it's swing and a miss.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another special interview episode of Swing and a Miss. Today, we're joined by Connor McKnight. Connor is the White Sox field reporter and play-by-play, and we're very honored to have a little bit of your time this morning. Connor, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Nice to meet you all.
Absolutely. We've had some really awesome interviews lately, and you're now the fourth representative from the AL Central that we're able to talk to. So if the Kansas City Royals happen to catch this episode, you're the last one left.
Nice. I love it. I'm glad we're going around the Central. It's a competitive division, if not necessarily, a lot of us over 500, although the White Sox got there last night, which is nice. We're enjoying that.
Absolutely. Well, Connor, if you don't mind, tell our listeners and us a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of dive right into some specific questions that we put together for you.
Yeah, absolutely. My media career kind of started here in Chicago after graduating from the University of Wisconsin. Bumped around a little bit. I graduated into a kind of a tough job market. That whole 2008 crash kind of thing was not fun. Yeah, everybody's nodding their head. Like, yeah, that wasn't fun. No, it wasn't fun for anybody. Yeah, we all felt that. So, bounced around for a little bit and ended up actually winning a contest at 670 The Score, the Heritage Sports radio station here in Chicago. They did kind of a combo dream job with which Mike Hall won on ESPN. Funnily enough, I see Mike Hall every Christmas and Easter, which is just kind of weird. Great guy. And I ended up winning that. Long story short, stayed there for 4 or 5 years, bounced to a couple different radio stations, picking up my own show and doing White Sox pre and post game on the radio for WLS. The National Cumulus contract went bankrupt, so that left me looking for something else to do. Picked up my own show on 670 The Score, the show or the station in which I started. COVID came around. Another fun one for everybody. And in 2021, I hooked back up with ESPN Radio here in town and started doing pre and post yet again, and also filling in on play-by-play with Len Casper and Darren Jackson, who had just started. Len had just started on the radio side for the White Sox after 16 years with the Chicago Cubs on television. And when the White Sox and a couple of different companies started CHSN, the new RSN for the White Sox just in 2025, last year, I switched over to the TV side, doing field reporting and some play-by-play, filling in on both television and radio. So long story short, it's been kind of a winding road. I would imagine that's a theme for a lot of people in sports media, especially around about our demographic and age. So it's been a blast. It's been awesome to hone in on baseball. It is the sports love for me. Nothing does it for me like this game. It's brutal. It's unforgiving. It comes for you every day. And in that way, it also forgives you every day, which is kind of great. And it's been a ride. It's been an absolute ride.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I want to start with this question. So you're native to Illinois and Chicago area specifically, yes?
Yeah, I was born in Evanston. We moved around a lot. I lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana for a little while, and then Appleton, Wisconsin for a little while. And then back here in Chicago, I've been here since, New Year's of 2009.
Okay. Yeah. So I have to ask you, when growing up, were you a North Sider or a South Sider, but only answer if it's not going to put your safety in jeopardy?
Yeah, no, my safety's been clear for a while. Haven't worked in this town for about 15 years. I've covered both teams. I covered the Cubs. I was in Pittsburgh when they won the one-game wild card playoff against the Pirates and made their run. I was at Wrigley Field when they got run out by the Mets in that same season, and then, covered a little bit of that team in 2016. Just a touch when I was, working and covering the White Sox as well. Growing up and moving around as often as I did, I followed both teams a ton. Frank Thomas and Sammy Sosa were both, my favorite players growing up. That's just kind of, I know what it sounds like, but when you move to Fort Wayne, Indiana, when you're about 7 or 8 years old, there's not a lot of purchase on your baseball fandom, right? The Tigers are up there, sort of, kind of. And, my cousins were big Tigers fans. So for that, it was like, well, I have to find somebody to root against my cousins because they're also Pistons fans. And Michael Jordan is a literal deity walking amongst us. So I can't, give them the Tigers thing. It's just that weird, baseball has those areas, especially like, in the 90s growing up, you had your blackout restrictions and all that kind of stuff. There's people in Iowa who are fans of baseball but can't watch games for decades at a time. Like, it was that weird kind of spot for us. And we definitely had, I think I think if I remember right, well, I mean, I wouldn't remember this, but my first baseball game ever was at Old Comiskey growing up. And my grandfather, who was a huge Reds fan, took me to the ball game and read a newspaper and ate a bag of peanuts the entire time. And I watched the ball game and enjoyed myself thoroughly.
Very cool. Very cool. You bring up a good point about baseball being so regionalized, but, being in one of those areas where there isn't a team, it really forces you to kind of pick what's most exciting for you, or like you said, pick against your cousins.
Yeah, it's the spite, I think, is a strong motivating factor when you're rooting for a fandom one way or another. Fort Wayne had a minor league team at the time. They were the Wizards then. I think they're the Tin Caps now. Other than Frank Thomas and Sammy Sosa, Matt Lawton was probably my favorite player because he was absolutely crushing it for the Fort Wayne Wizards at the time and would go on to, I think, Twins fame for a little while.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we had some Matt Lawton times.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, he's no Mark Grace, though, right?
He's no Mark Grace, but no one is.
No one.
In a market where you have two teams like that, you have the Cubs and the White Sox. I grew up in the Bay Area, so you have the Giants and A's, both in that regional area. There's not a lot of that in baseball. I think that might be those two in New York are really the three where there's just like button heads like that. What's the relationship between the two teams like that, where you're trying to share a city and a market and a fan base and grab your share of everything?
Yeah, I think, like a lot of relationships, they change over time. They wax and wane. There are good times and bad times. I'll tell you, one of my favorite Chicago sports memories. We just did this for the station as well. We're kind of going through, our favorite memories. I was a reporter in 2010. I just started with the Score, the radio station that I kind of began my career here with. And one of my first assignments was covering the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, they would go on to win the Stanley Cup in 2010. I went to the University of Wisconsin. That hockey team won the national title in 2006. And they had guys like Adam Burrish and Jack Skilley and Jake Dowell, and they were all on that Wisconsin team. So I walked into the Blackhawks locker room with all three of those guys there, having covered all of them in college, and knowing Adam Burrish just a little bit in school. Long story, fast forward to the summer after they've won the Cup and they're doing the tour with the Stanley Cup throughout the city, as one does. Vaguely sober for most of the trip, where the Blackhawks, I don't know that. I mean, you get to celebrate when you're out there and you've won a Stanley Cup. So I'm covering a Cubs White Sox game at Wrigley Field. The Blackhawks show up with the cup at the ballpark. And there's this team photo you find on, there's this photo of the Cubs on one side of the mound, the Blackhawks on the mound, and then the White Sox team on the other side of the mound. And the Stanley Cup made its way up to the press box at some point later. Now, remember, it had been decades and decades and decades since the Blackhawks had won a Stanley Cup. And nowadays, everybody has a picture with the Stanley Cup because it has, made its way around kind of thing, the Blackhawks having won 3. But at this point, that was not the case. So the cup's up there in the clubhouse or in the press box. And we're all kind of like wandering through with our early camera phones and taking pictures with the cup and this whole thing. And then we look at the scoreboard and realize that not only does Ted Lilly have a no-hitter through 6, but so does Gavin Floyd, the White Sox starter. And we're all starting to look around like, oh my God, we have a game to cover. We should go do this. I'm working for the rights holder for the White Sox at the time. And no sooner than like 3 seconds after I walk out of taking my vanity photo with the Stanley Cup, our director, our station producer, calls me and it's like, if Gavin does this, you're going out on the field. You've got the interview. It was Ed Farmer, God rest him, and Darren Jackson was our play-by-play team on the radio at the time. So they're talking me through how I'm going to go to, and this is like my 15th, maybe 20th assignment at a baseball game, and maybe the third time I'd ever worked at Wrigley Field, which is a whole nother production because Wrigley, you've only got the one elevator at the ballpark. So having to run down all the way to the corner, take the elevator down. I mean, it takes an inning and a half at a Cubs Sox game at Wrigley Field to get anywhere in that ballpark. So now I'm going, well, I'm late already for a post-game interview that may or may not happen. It's those kind of relationships with all of the teams in this town that kind of make this environment really special. If you're talking about fandoms, however, there is anything from the deepest, ugliest, and most sincere hatred from one to the other, to I have to live with a wife, not me personally, but there are many families where one spouse is a diehard White Sox fan and the other spouse is a diehard Cubs fan, and they've got to navigate that this weekend, which I'm sure drives a lot of appointments at couples therapy throughout the weekend. It's a whole thing.
Are you noticing any new fans because of the fandom of our new American Pope?
It's funny. I don't know that there are new fans necessarily, but I know that they're having grown up attending Catholic schools my entire life. I know there are a lot of Catholics here in town that have a connection to this team now. A friend of mine is actually writing a biography about the Pope and his time here in town, and his life and his election to the pontificate and whatnot. I got to tell you, when it happened, everyone who worked at the ballpark, everyone who's in and around could not believe that we've got Pope Bob, who's from the South Side and grew up going to White Sox games. It's crazy. I looked at Darren Jackson, who's just I've mentioned his name a couple of times. He's our analyst on the radio broadcast. He had done TV with Hawk Harrelson for about a decade after his own retirement from the game. He played for the White Sox twice. I looked at DJ the day after the Pope was elected Pope, and I said, DJ, you understand that not only does the Pope know your name, he has an opinion on your work. The Pope. And he's like, yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's wild. It's just, the guys that died, the Pope, the Holy Father, is a diehard White Sox fan and could take you through his favorite light hitting middle infielders of the late 90s and early 2000s. It's crazy.
Any plans in the works to bring the Pope to the South Side for a game?
I can't say.
There is a fantastic giveaway that the White Sox are doing with a pontificate Pope. It's a stocking cap, right?
It's a mitre. It's actually the hat is called a mitre. Yeah. MITRE, I think, is the spelling of it. That is the official term. It's a whole thing. It's a fantastic giveaway. I know it's already sold out. A privilege of my position is sometimes I'll get some of the giveaway items. And, people know that I was going to ask around for the mitre hat, and I got this one. It's not, that one's not for you, pal. It's going to everybody else. This is sold out. All right. It's going to the people who come to the ball game.
So between the Pope, there's also one other really big new international name. So who's kind of been bigger for the White Sox this year, the Pope or Munetaka Murakami coming over and absolutely killing it right off the bat?
If Mune ran for Pope, I think there would be a split decision. He's been fantastic. And I think one of the things, Chris Getz, the general manager of the ball club, just had a press conference last week when we started we're in the midst of the longest homestand the White Sox have this year. It's a 9-gamer. Played the Mariners, then the Royals, and now we've got the Cubs coming up as we talk tonight. The Friday night game is the first one. And Chris mentioned, and he's not one to, he's not one to kind of read his own press clippings. He doesn't necessarily, pump his own, but when the ball club makes the decision that they have and kind of shows the proof in the pudding, which has been what the last couple of years with him as the general manager have been about, right? Kind of like eating your vegetables and taking your medicine and stuff. This team has needed that. This organization has needed that. But they took a flyer on Murakami and, landed him at 17 mil per year. And he was told by a couple different general managers, you beat the industry on this one. And that's got to be a good feeling to have, right? I mean, regardless of whether or not you kind of can stomach as a ball club, as a lineup can stomach kind of a 3 outcome player, home run, strikeout, and walk. The White Sox are absolutely in a situation where they should have. And it's one of the things that I said immediately after signing is that this is exactly the kind of move that this team should be making for this kind of money and with this kind of player. And Murakami, too, has really embraced his teammates. This is a very, very tight clubhouse. This is one that really appreciates one another throughout. That has been different than a lot of other ones that I've covered. And granted, winning helps, right? I mean, the White Sox are one of the hottest teams in baseball right now. They have the longest winning streak active in Major League Baseball, a whole 5 games, which is great. And they're a game over 500, and Murakami is up there in the league leaders in home runs. But his effort and his dedication to getting to know these guys and getting to know this game and getting to know a new position and a new league has been really impressive to watch, for lack of a better term. It's been really something.
Kind of in that same vein. So at the end of the 2024 season, the White Sox were in a very different position than they are right now. End of the season, 41 and 121, one of the most disappointing seasons in baseball history. And as we talk here this Friday morning, they're in a wild card position. We're not even 600 days later. So obviously, the addition of Murakami is a big piece, but what else can you attribute this pretty rapid turnaround? We don't tend to see baseball turn around this quickly, if things were to hold pat.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, Ben, and I think this kind of idea of eating your vegetables and taking your vitamins kind of thing. The White Sox have invested in the international market, not just with Murakami, but also with their academy in Dominican. That matters, right? Putting money into the trajectory machine that a lot of ball clubs have throughout the ball in their home ballpark and at AAA and at their spring training facility. That all matters. They have Brian Bannister as the director of pitching for them, and Bannister has been, whether with the Red Sox or Giants before that, one of the real innovators in, pitching infrastructure throughout the game over the last, call it 10, 15 years, perhaps since his retirement as a pitcher. And they've also got Ryan Fuller, who's the director of hitting at this point. And the White Sox have really kind of, thickened up that coaching infrastructure in an effort to get, kind of a through line from the major leagues all the way down to Kannapolis, where their high A or their low A team is, and really fortified how we do this, what we're trying to do. I think the other thing too, and the draft pick of Colson Montgomery was, an interesting one at the time, but it's been a long time since the White Sox have had a high school hitter, which Colson Montgomery was coming out of Indiana, and developed him to a point where he is one of, if not, maybe Bobby Witt is a really good player, but might be other than, listen, he's really good. Colson Montgomery is maybe that next guy. I mean, you look at the defensive numbers as we stand right now, some of the offensive metrics. I mean, he's an outstanding shortstop. And this guy was, had his season put on pause last year, sent to the Arizona complex and reworked his whole thing from, in between the ears to his hands at the plate with the director of hitting Ryan Fuller. We're doing this at 8:20 in the morning. And that has been a total reshape. It's been a total reshape of what this ball club is capable of. You've got the number 1 draft pick coming up in July, which may or may not be Rock Chalowski or another shortstop. It's got plenty of depth and waves in what the prospects are doing at this point too. Oh, and by the way, Davis Martin, a kitchen sink righty, has worked his tail off to come back from Tommy John surgery and be one of the top 5 ERA guys in the American League to this point. I mean, the pitching has really performed well. And I think Will Venable and the rest of the coaching staff deserve a lot of credit for taking advantage and not being afraid to go after as many platoon matchups as they can with the lineup throughout. I think that's what you got to do when you're looking to win on the margins. There's a lot more to it We could honestly, it's a question that we could talk about for the next 20 minutes if you wanted to, because it's such a stark and thorough turn from where things were, like you said, Ben, 600 days ago.
Yeah.
How do you bring fans back when you've been in the lower end for so long? They check out. How do you bring them back into the stadium? Is it just put a winning product on the field and let that speak for itself, or are there other tricks you have up your sleeve for that?
Yeah. Well, Nels, let me ask you a question. Do you mean from the organizational standpoint or from our network standpoint? Because my job is kind of dual in that role, right. And I would take a different approach to the question depending on who we're talking about.
Well, we'll go from more your perspective, from the broadcast end of things.
We have two field reporters, myself and Brooke Fletcher. And our job is to bring as much of the story from behind the scenes as we possibly can into the broadcast for John Triffin and Steve Stone, our broadcast team, our booth. The good news about our broadcast, and it has been for a very long time, is that Steve Stone is the best analyst in the business, bar none. He's fantastic. And every time you turn on a White Sox game, you get to know exactly how this game works from a very granular spot. And that's something the White Sox have had for a very long time. And they've, quite frankly, the broadcast has kind of overcome some of the things on the field. I mean, listen, you lose 121 games, it's kind of tough. But since we started at CHSN, with Brooke and myself, our job has really been to bring things as many as we can that you're not going to hear about from the players themselves, because we've kind of, it's our job to form relationships with these guys and understand who they are, where they're coming from, and bring you those stories. We have, tonight, as we talk, we have a show called Friday Night All Access. And for Friday night home games, we will mic up a player or coach. We get in-game interviews with players as the game goes on. The other Friday night, Colson Montgomery had taken a ball back up the middle with the bases loaded and scored 3 to give the White Sox the lead. And no fewer than, I want to say, 35 seconds after he came in from the field, from second base, Brooke Fletcher, who's down in the dugout, had a microphone in his face asking him about that at bat. And he didn't give you a cliche. He gave you, well, listen, my first swing at that at bat was terrible. I had completely forgotten my approach. I took a timeout. I walked around a little bit, got myself refocused, and looked for the fastball down the middle, or, the breaking ball that was a little low and away to hook into center field that I wanted to get. That's, you don't get that in other places. Brooke does an amazing job in getting that out of the guys. And our Friday Night All Access broadcast is something unique to baseball that I know a lot of other teams are looking at and kind of admiring. And I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Awesome.
Do you feel like there are things that you can do as a reporter to pull more than the athlete cliche out of the player, or is that more based off of an individual player's personality about how much they want to give?
It's a great question. And I think, yes, it's always going to be up to, because you can't make them talk, right? It's the horse in the water kind of thing, right? I'm sure there's a saying in there somewhere. But I think the reason, and I learned this when I started going on the road with the team a few years ago, doing play-by-play and filling in. I'd travel when I was, going to fill in for Len, or fill in for, Jason Benetti when he was here, or fill in for John since he's come around. When you are on the road with the team, you engender a trust with these guys that doesn't exactly happen when you're just showing up to home games. Not that isn't, a lot of work, but the conversations you have off the record, not about, sordid things or whatever, but just checking in with the guy and asking him about his family and trying to understand where he comes from, and, kind of seeing his approach to in-game and out-of-game stuff. Those kinds of conversations and being able to get to know these guys leads you to better conversations itself. That kind of trust and that kind of relationship building is the reason we're on the road, so that we can get better conversations when we're on camera. I mean, it's just a true story. I mean, when you guys started, podcasting and throwing yourselves up on camera, I mean, I get this way. Shoot, we're going to do a couple of podcasts later this morning. You flip on that thing and you're like, oh God, I look like that. And I sound like this. And it's like, this isn't my everyday. Like, you talk to Colson or Chase Mydroth or whatever. It's like, dude, I'm just trying to take the ball up the middle and keep my jersey from, ripping apart when I slide down to the bait. Like that's the gig. this isn't really my job, talking about baseball on camera. But as they get comfortable with you, the reporter, Brooke or John or Steve, then they are more comfortable talking about what they've done and how they're going to get done what they want to do next. And those kinds of things are how you get better answers.
You're very right, though. Every time we turn the camera on, I get scared of.
Oh, I know. I've been thinking that like half this time here. I'm like, oh, what a round face.
Josh's light just keeps getting dimmer and dimmer.
It's a good trick.
So I do have kind of a more selfish personal question here. You mentioned filling in for Jason Benetti as a big Tigers fan and somebody who just loves sports and has listened to Jason for years on other broadcasts and stuff. Did you get to work with him much, and what was he like to be able to work with, just as a huge Benetti guy over here?
I did. Yeah. He's a great human being. He's incredibly funny. I remember one day we were, when I was doing the White Sox radio side of things, we had a 3.5 hour rain delay or something like that. And, Jason's making his rounds and stops into the pre and post game booth, my booth. And we're just, talking about God knows what and whatever. And Benetti, as you know, has a lot of different impersonations. He can give you a lot of different voices. And I don't know what got us talking about it, but all of a sudden we're talking about Keith Jackson, right? And doing the "Oh Nelly" and that kind of stuff. And he's got a great Keith Jackson impersonation. It's spot on. And all of a sudden, again, during this 3-hour rain delay, we're talking about the 2005 national title between Texas and USC, Vince Young and Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush and the whole thing, and just how great a football. So 5 minutes after a Keith Jackson impersonation, we have watched, I'm going to say, the entire first quarter of the national title game on YouTube for no reason, just because it was fun. I got to work with Jason for a little while. Steve was sick for a series in, I want to say 2022. And I sat second seat with Jason for a whole series. And, I had done some play-by-play, both on radio and television, but I was still pretty new to the whole thing. I did not do any play-by-play until my very first play-by-play opportunity was doing a major league game on radio in 21. So I'm sitting side seat with Jason, and we got done with the first game, and we're walking out of the ballpark together. And I remember looking at him and going, how'd you think it went? How'd we do? Not necessarily wanting to know, any feedback from me, just knowing that we had 2 more games to do. And, I never stepped foot in a major league batter's box, except for when Roger Bossert told me to get the hell out of there, the groundskeeper for the White Sox, just kind of wanted to see what it felt like every now and again. And he's like, listen, man, your job is to be you, say what you see, and I'll take care of the rest. And you don't hear that from guys who are one of the best in the business, like Jason is, doing the national gigs that he does and all the different sports he does. I mean, he could have easily looked at me and said, listen, pal, keep it quiet, read the station reads and get out of my way, kind of thing. Right. I mean, you hear stories like this, and Jason just could not have been a kinder and more considerate person to work with. I think his true superpower as a play-by-play guy is getting the absolute best out of anyone he's working with in any situation. He is absolutely incredible at doing it.
Yeah. Some of my favorite things, before he came over to the Tigers, I used to watch him with Bill Walton doing college basketball on, the Pac-12 games back when that existed. And just his rapport with Bill Walton, who, we all know is an absolute wild card. And so to be able to just absolutely be seamless with a guy where you never really know where he's going to be going was just, I respected it so much. So I was so excited, sorry to take him from you, but I was so excited. That was my big off season, acquisition when he came over. So, yeah, it's always nice to hear that, they're great to work with too.
He is. He's a great guy. I look forward to seeing him in Detroit when we make the trip.
Yeah.
So say you got a call today that you're going to do play-by-play for the next upcoming series starting on, Tuesday or Monday, whenever the next one is. What do you do to start your prep in order to prepare yourself for the opponent?
Well, I think the big reason that, that it's as, let's say not easy, but simple is that I'm there every day, right? I mean, I know these guys, I know these coaches, I know this team, I know what's coming up next. And, I think baseball can be unforgiving in a way that, tomorrow's coming for you regardless of whether you're ready or not. But the good news is that you were there yesterday, and the work that you did yesterday informs the work, for today, that kind of thing. One of the things I like to do is, sit down with our producer, with Steve and with Brooke. If I were filling in, obviously Brooke would be the field reporter. Brooke Fletcher would be the field reporter for the game, kind of understand where we're all coming from, and what the kind of stories Brooke is looking to tell. How can I support those as a play-by-play guy? How can I, set up that story without telling that story, right? Because it's hers to tell, and she's got the info. But you want to tease a little bit of it. You want to have something to pay it off at the back end, that kind of thing. But Len Casper's been such an influential person to me in my kind of journey through play-by-play. He was the guy that kind of as the radio guy for the White Sox got me started on this, and I am humbled to say that in a little way I come from the Len Casper broadcasting tree. It's do the game. It's say what you see. It's make sure that you've got that kind of fidelity to the game for the fans that are watching or listening, and let them know what you feel about how that game's going on. I like to think along with the manager a little bit as we go, so as potential bullpen matchups kind of come around, I know who pitches where and kind of where those spots are and those pinch hit opportunities, that kind of thing. Len is endlessly curious about this game, despite the fact that he's been working in baseball since 2002 with the Marlins. He just never runs out of good questions to ask about how you're going to go ahead and get this thing done today. And I try and do the same. And then, maybe the number one thing really after all of that is looking across from you and seeing Steve Stone. You have to take the moment where your 8-year-old brain goes, oh, hey, look, there's the guy that I learned baseball from for the better part of a decade while watching Steve Stone call games anywhere he was on TV. And you got to go, okay, forget about that. Now set up Steve Stone. Now make sure that Steve has the places he needs to go. Make sure you're setting him up for the places and things that he wants to talk about. Because I don't mind saying it, and I think John would say the same, Steve. So set him up, let him knock it down.
Well, Connor, I know that we only had you for about 30 minutes today, but you have time for a few rapid fire questions?
I got you. No worries.
All right. Have you ever attempted the 999 challenge, or do you have any interest in doing it?
Absolutely not. Not a chance. Wouldn't do it. It's possible that I have actually achieved a 999 challenge back in the day before it was a thing, before social media, but I could not say nor would admit to that kind of thing. There's not enough Pepto in the world for that.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are at the age that we could do that and get up the next day.
That time has passed.
Yeah. Favorite band?
Ben Folds, or I really get into the Decemberists lately. I got to Ben Folds 5. It's Ben Folds 5.
Those are two great options that I don't think anybody's given us so far.
Yeah.
I love the Decemberists.
Oh, great.
Favorite drink or drink of choice?
I am a huge coffee fan. I get pretty coffee snobby when we're on the road. I'm always looking for a good cup. I would have to say coffee at this point. So
Starbucks, yay or nay? That's kind of what I figured.
Starbucks is when, no shade, they're a very successful company. Starbucks is for when you need coffee, not necessarily when you want coffee.
It has its purpose.
That's right.
That should be their slogan, actually.
Starbucks, we're on every corner.
We're here.
And then last one for me, as a Wisconsin graduate, I assume you follow the football team pretty closely.
You know what? Yes and no. Some of us got really excited about the Luke Fickell era, and
that was going to be my
haven't
question.
Really had the payoff that we wanted. And Ben, why would you bring that up at the end?
Well, as an Ohio State guy, I love Luke Fickell. We had him as a coach for 1 year, and it didn't go well there either. So I'm just curious. Do you think he makes it through the end of the season?
Had I known that we were hanging out with an Ohio State fan for this long, I may have ended this interview a long time ago. All I'll say about I have no idea. But remember, Ben, David Gilreath took that opening kickoff all the way back, and we never let you breathe the rest of that night. And it's one of my favorite memories of my life.
I remember that game very vividly.
Good.
Man, I catch a lot of strays just for rooting for my team.
They're not strays, Ben. You root for Ohio State. They're targeted strikes. These aren't strays.
Targeted strikes.
In case you haven't figured it out, the rest of the Midwest, we're not big Ohio people.
No.
I'm also a Michigan grad, so I've got it just as strongly there.
That's okay. I'm not changing.
I wouldn't if I were you.
Well, Connor, we can't thank you enough for your time today. This was really fun, really interesting as well. You know, we're learning about a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with a lot of the people that we're getting to interview, and we're hearing great, really interesting stories. And you just added another layer of interesting stories and behind the scenes facts. So we can't thank you enough.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Nice to meet y'all, and best of luck down the road. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.